Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Webster E. Moore. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, Discovering My Royal Heritage While Surviving in Black Skin. It's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, CITIofbooks.com, pretty much wherever books are sold. But you're going to want to check out his personal website today and just get lost in everything that he has to offer. You can thank me later. And before we go any further, I do want to take this opportunity and point out that Webster was brought to our network by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And you already know I'm talking about CITI of Books. So listen, if you're a writer out there, you have a book that you've written, but now you need some assistance moving it. Well, I already gave you the answer. You got to head on over to CITIofbooks.com. This is what they specialize in, people. Their team is waiting to assist you. So head on over there and gather all of the ways that they're going to help maximize your creative endeavors. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Webster here on the line. People, I'm telling you, when you start to do research on his book, Discovering My Royal Heritage While Surviving in Black Skin, you're going to have an idea of what we're discussing today. And I want to emphasize the word idea because that's all you're going to get. When you pick up the book, you're going to understand amongst a plethora of things at the most basic form, this book celebrates black excellence. It's an education on the contributions made by black people outside of what is generally taught in our education system, which of course, unfortunately, ends up being slavery. Now, it's a culmination of a fantastic education while at the same time exploring his journey and how discovering that information empowered him. People, this book has so much to offer. And I remember from my own background in education, for years, all that was taught to me was slavery, as I'm sure so many of you can relate. And then in my junior year as an elective, I decided to take African American history, and my world exploded. The amount of awareness that was brought to me in terms of so many other, let's say, ancestors, other people from my community, from my background, from my heritage, and their contributions and what they had gone through and what they had done was impactful, it was empowering, and it was illuminating because there is so much more to the black experience. There's so much more to our history than slavery. And this book is just the precipice. This book is just the start. You're going to want to check back in to his Amazon, Barnes & Noble pages, and his personal website, royalheritage.com, frequently because there's another book on the horizon that's going to continue with the education. This is just the start. And at the end of the day, don't take my word for it, okay? Take Webster's. It's his book. He's written it. It's his life. He's lived it. He's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for a fantastic education. Webster, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great, especially after that fantastic introduction that you just laid out. It really just fits in exactly who and what I am and what I'm trying to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Listen, Webster, the thanks is all given to you, man. You laid a fantastic foundation here and a roadmap for me to follow. So thank you for writing the book. Thank you for being here with us to discuss it. We have a lot of information to go into, but before we jump into the book, Webster, start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Well, I was born in Mobile, Alabama. When I was born, which was 1938, it was completely segregated, meaning that the school that I went to, which was all Catholic, was totally black. My dentists, my doctors, my library, my movies, you name it, it was totally black community. there was never a mixture with whites other than going outside of that community and doing work outside. But meeting with whites wasn't like meeting with people of color that you're used to in your own community. Matter of fact, I often felt like going outside of my community was like going into the jungle, meeting other species who were not who and what I was. And so I had to follow the rules outside of my community according to according to survival needs.
Absolutely.
And so I never saw them as so much separate, but other than who and what I am. So I didn't have to understand them. I just had to understand. My background really started, I would say, in 1955. It sort of happened because I just happened to come home that evening, and my mother told me to pack and to get my brothers together and pack them because we were leaving the South. And wow, that sort of blew my mind because I was going into my last year of high school, really excited about going to my first prom. And after sitting on the bench for so long, I was going to play first string football this year. And I had to say, what? Moving? Why? What's going on? And but my mother stopped me right in my tracks. I just couldn't believe how serious she was. And she said, they just dragged a 14-year-old black kid out of his bed and beat that child so bad his face was unrecognizable. Yeah. Then they wrapped barbed wire around his neck, shot him in the head, hung him into a gin fan, and then threw him into the Tallahatchie River. I'm getting you and your brothers out of the South right now because once they kill one, they feel open season on others. Right. And your father and I have decided that we're leaving the South. That was my introduction in 1955 to leaving the South and going to, of all places, a place called California, Los Angeles, City of the Angels. And arriving there, of course, I had never heard of such a place. But that was my first experience, my last year of high school and my first experience of integration in a Catholic school, which was all of my students in the school were white. I was the only black, but I was quite comfortable because they were Catholic. I was already ahead of myself in my schooling, so I sat right up front. And when the nun asked a question, my hand went up first. I answered the question, and was I put into what you might call my place? That nun looked at me and screamed that he educated me on the point that my brain was 1/5 the size of the other students in that class. There is no way I could possibly answer a question like I did. The only way I could have done that is that I cheated. They were not going to allow that in this school, and I was devastated. I had never heard such a thing in my life. I had no idea what racism was in all my years in the South. The rules were clear. There was no confusion. But integration, wow. The next thing that happened, I had to go to the restroom. The little white boys came to me, and they were all standing around just staring. And I was wondering, why are they looking at me so much? It's unbelievable. One of them came over to me and said, we just want to see your tail. They actually thought I had a tail. I mean, so here I am. They were just as frustrated or just, they knew as little about me as I knew about them. I went to college, Los Angeles City College, and I had the same exact experience. I was like the only black kid in City College and went to the Navy after I saw a sign that said, join the Navy and see the world. But lo and behold, because I had a electrical background, I was enrolled into the Navy as an electrician's mate. But once I got aboard ship, that captain was so angry, he didn't want any black sailors on his ship. He wouldn't allow me to be an electrician's mate, said, no, you're going to be a boatswain's mate. Your job is to clean the ship. I just couldn't believe it. Luckily, because of that, because of the way I was being treated, I found out that the only way I could survive is to show some physical skills, because somehow that's respected. So I joined the boxing club in the Navy, and after that, I was really respected. I even met an ensign who came over and spoke with me and had a long conversation. Turns out, when I told him I wanted to be an electrician's mate, the next day he had me moved from the boatswain's to electrician's mate division.
Mm-hmm. You know, Webster, wow, man. I mean, honestly, there's so many words that come to mind, but the first one is wow, because what you're talking about with your background is something that many of us have only heard about in history books, have only heard about in history classes. And, you know, when you're talking about a teacher regarding you as a cheater because you couldn't be that intellectual, it reminds me of so many things, right? And you're talking of education, and I remember one thing that I would constantly get from a lot of students, right, a lot of my peers, whenever I would speak to them and they would actually get to know me, because like you, I oftentimes was the only black person in the class. Right? I'm surrounded by white people, and I'm the only black person there. And a lot of these kids didn't really have any connections or associations with black people, with African Americans. And one common phrase that I would always receive was, once I started speaking, they were like, "Oh wow, you're the whitest black person I've ever met." And it was something that I remember as a young child. It offered a lot of confusion, because I'm like, wait, am I not black? What do you mean by that? And as I got older, I realized what they were associating me with is the fact that I was educated did not align with their perception of the black community. And it leads into my next question here, Webster, because I think what you're doing here is so key and so important for any day and time, but especially right now. But Webster, I want to go into inspiration here. Why do you think it was important for you to write this book and make sure other people read it as well?
Well, let's jump into almost the summary in the book, because the importance is for not only people of my ethnic group, but people of all ethnic groups to learn and have a journey like I did, where you can realize that it's not about these things that's happening outside of you and outside of me and the perceptions of others. It's really about, how do you get yourself through it? How do you what lessons are you learning? And how can you use these skills to live and to survive and to grow and to build? What is going on? Why are these people treating me this way? What is it that they see other than the color of my skin? Because they don't know who I am. They just move according to what they see outside of me. And why is even the church, the Catholic Church I grew up in, from kindergarten all the way through the 12th grade, even to the point where my mom and the nuns all thought I was going to be a priest. But I knew that wasn't possible, because I had never seen a black Jesus. All the angels in my church were white. All the statues and saints were white. So I knew that there was no future for me in that kind of a religion. And because obviously I didn't fit. There's no such thing. Until I, of course, as you did, also read, went to college, and et cetera, and found out that everyone in the Bible were black. I never knew that. It all happened in Egypt. Mm-hmm. The whole foundation was built up there. So this is what happened to me, is that I ended up going to Egypt after a whole history of things happening, from beatings and et cetera. A matter of fact, it was a white girl that after I had gotten beating because 4 white kids at Kent State University were shot and killed out of demonstrations dealing with Vietnam. And mine being the chairman of BSU at the time at UCLA, I gave a speech. And after that, I was beaten by the police so bad that I was totally unconscious. But after that, it was a white grad student that was hired as a tutor to help me finish my degree since I was out of school so long because of the beating. And she said, you need to get out of this. Hey, you need to go somewhere, because how can you finish your degree after what you've just gone through? And I said, well, yeah, I would like to go somewhere. I would like to find out what's going on. Matter of fact, I'd like to go to Africa. I'd like to go home and find out what I'm all about. And she said, well, why don't you go? I said, are you kidding? That's across the country. That's across the world. I don't have that kind of money. He said, I've got $3,000. It's just sitting here. Here, take this and go. Unbelievable. I went and told my wife. She said, take the opportunity. And I did. And everything changed. Once I was in Egypt, it was amazing. As soon as my feet hit the ground, I saw something that I had no understanding what it was. And that was a gigantic statue. It must have been almost, 15, 20 feet high. The features on that statue were exactly the same as mine. The lips, the face. I mean, they used to call me Big Lips. Mm-hmm. I mean, just like I was distorted. And turns out he was a pharaoh, a bunch of them, features exactly as mine. There were some people called Nubians ran up to me and they were pointing. They said, Lil Ramsey. I didn't know anybody named Ramsey. What are you doing? They didn't speak English, but they came over to me and they pointed at the statue and at his lips and et cetera, and his high cheekbones. And they kept doing that. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me, wow, they're calling me Lil Ramsey because this is Ramsey II, and he looks like my twin. Mm-hmm. And for the first time in my life, I felt at home. I had met my ancestors. They was unbelievable. They were pharaohs, talking about royal heritage. The Ramses, the families, I mean, princes, kings, queens, you name it, gold. They really laid the foundation for Western civilization. Everything from the language, the alphabet, papyrus used for papers. At the time, there was no such place as Rome. There was no Greece. There was no... Everyone, all societies were completely dependent upon what they got out of Egypt. Even the Bible speaks of going to Egypt for everything. Egypt was the foundation, and that foundation was nothing but black people. Now, how can you keep that kind of history out of the schools, out of the educational system, out completely without our ever knowing it? All we know, all I knew, and all I could ever know was we were once slaves. Right. And now we have a chance. And at what? We were it was just the opposite. All other colors, all other races came to black people in order to learn how to write, to learn how to read, to build libraries, and to especially understand mathematics. And they did that, I mean, for thousands of years. We're talking about they've discovered that the Sphinx itself is over 10,000 years. Never heard of the Ramses, never heard of King Tut, never heard of, you just name them. I said, I need to research, study, and spend the rest of my life passing this information on to not just black people, but to the world. The white kids don't know it either. And they only react on what they've been taught. So I finally picked up a piece of information that really helped me, and that to understand this. And that information, he wrote that there was more millionaires, all of them were slaveholders in Mississippi, than anywhere in the whole United States of America. More millionaires. Nearly 4 million American slaves was worth some $3.5 billion. That was worth more than all the manufacturing and railroads combined. All of it. Now, this explains why the entire institutions of the United States conspired in the subordination of people in black, brown, and or yellow skin. I mean, money. It's hard to even quite put that in my mind that there were more millionaires in Mississippi than in the total United States. And that agenda, in order to keep us in that position and to keep support of the institutions, like the churches never argued against slavery, good white people never argued against slavery, but they completely tied into these lies that we were animals. As a matter of fact, in 1955, when I left, when my parents brought me to Los Angeles, California, on the books at that time, we were still defined as collateral, chattel, right. On the books, legally, chattel, which means if we are chattel, of course, they look at us and say, well, of course you don't have a brain. You guys never built anything. You've never done anything. It's like, wow, yes, this had to be written, had to be talked about. The world needs to be educated because all the other cultures are going through exactly the same thing. And to be able to control the information about who and what we are, that we were the Pharaohs, that we did bring education and mathematics and religion to the other societies. I mean, the idea of religion, period, is totally Egyptian, totally African, and always was. Yeah. It's just that, what do you do when you fall into an open university when you're standing in Egypt? It's all around you, on the walls, right in your face. The 10 Commandments, right up on the wall. It was called the 42 Negative Confessions, but the 10 Commandments, the idea of the Holy Family, that was Osir and Aset, and totally out of Africa. The idea of the resurrection, the idea of life forever, all of that is African. And it was just duplicated. The names changed. And well, you can see where I'm going with this is just that there is just so much information, and I try to squeeze it all into a few pages of a book. It's only about 100 pages, 120 pages. But it's just enough to get started. But so for sure, I have to write more. There are many black authors that write and always write, but the information isn't getting out. It's not getting the attention that it needs. Mm-hmm. And if it was true, if we can get this imperial agenda that the whites have of keeping us into this mode of that they are the people of superiority. Only they can guide us. They even bought into the idea that King Tut is white. I mean, you can just look. I've got some pictures of him from his tomb. I mean, he's just a black kid. His father, Akhenaten, you can't miss his features. Totally black. His mother, totally black. I'm just saying the information is there, and it's there in solid granite, and it's there in the mummies, but somehow the world isn't able to see it. Now that is something, and that's why I wrote this book.
Webster, we have discussed so much information today, but is there anything that we haven't yet touched up on that you really want to make sure our listening audience is aware of?
Yes, this one thing is very important, and it has to be looked at with a lot more attention, and that is the idea, as I discovered, that we are all Africans. I mean, everybody on the planet is African. The black people, black skin was the beginning of human beings. No matter what books you pick up, what information, even the Bible, it all started in Egypt. It all started at the bottom of the mountain of the moon. And since we all came from Africa, and that's our originality, then anyone that uses the term race is a social entity that Europeans brought into being and created. There's no such thing as a black race or a yellow race. We are all human beings. We have the same DNAs. Your heart can be exchanged for a person in any other color. So how does color itself override the reality is that we're all human beings, and we are all the same. We all have the same DNAs, the same blood types, and et cetera. So I just want to really emphasize that if we can just realize that we are all human beings, we all are spiritual beings, and it's the spirit inside that we have to connect with to guide us, and not this information outside our own good needs. So how can you grow if you don't even know that we are all the same, we are all brothers and sisters, and to use another person for any reason as in a way that you wouldn't do the same to yourself means that you've been taught wrongly. You've been miseducated. And so I just want to end with the idea that we're all Africans. We're all the same people. Mm-hmm. There is no distinction, and there's no color in spirit. And certainly there's no God that has a certain color. It's all the same. And if we knew that, then we can all love equally.
People, could we have selected a more perfect embodiment of a person of distinction to be on our network? I'm telling you, I know you are all like me. You're at the edge of your seat, hanging on to every word. Here's the best part. We've barely scratched the surface. I mean, there is so much to be discovered on those pages. You got to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, cityofbooks.com. Check out his personal site, royalheritage.com as well. Get lost in it, okay? Once again, the title is Discovering My Royal Heritage While Surviving in Black Skin by Webster E. Moore. Check back in frequently, people, because he has another book still in creation. We don't have the time to go into it today, but the education is going to continue. Check back in frequently and get lost in all of it because, again, for my brothers and sisters out there, this is a fantastic education for you, but anybody outside of our community, this is for you as well. Because the old adage continues to ring true in my mind. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And our history has been hidden. Go and discover it. It starts with this book, but I promise you there is so much more of a journey that you're going to want to take afterwards. And you got Webster to thank for all of it. Webster, this has been an absolute pleasure, man, and a true honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me.